God has divinely appointed times scheduled in history, and He uses the sun, the moon, and the stars as visible indicators. Lunar eclipses, also known as blood moons, are one of these signs. One blood moon has just occurred. According to our guest, 3 more are ahead. Pastor Mark Biltz, again today on Jewish Voice.
Well, shalom and welcome to Jewish Voice, a program to help you to understand the Jewish roots of your Christian faith, Bible prophecy, and world events surrounding Israel. Blood moons, or lunar eclipses, were predicted thousands of years ago as an end-time sign. Back this week to tell us more about this amazing phenomenon taking place this year is Pastor Mark Biltz. Mark believes that the biblical calendar, not the Gregorian calendar that most of the world uses, is the backdrop for understanding prophetic history. Is it a coincidence that these blood moons, these lunar eclipses, are taking place during key Jewish holidays this year and next, or is this a warning from God? Please welcome back Pastor Mark Biltz. Mark, welcome back. You know, I think we could talk about this for weeks on end. It's absolutely fascinating. I want you just to recap. Signs in the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, they're declared in God's word. They speak to us.
Exactly. In Psalms 19, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God. And I want to point out there's a big difference between astrology and biblical astronomy. Astrology, we think it's all about us. You may be sweet, but it's not about you. Okay? Biblical astronomy is when we realize if it's all about God and we keep that in perspective, we won't fall into error. And so God, He's declaring His glory. And He said, He's the one that said it. In Genesis 1:14, He created the sun and the moon to send signals. What greater way to send signals but through an eclipse? And the reason why? How many hundreds of languages are there? God chose something that speaks to every language, to every heart. It's a simple way to communicate to us.
Everybody can see it.
Everybody.
At a certain time. Help us, just to recap, for those that didn't watch the program last week, what a blood moon is and the difference between a partial lunar eclipse, a full lunar eclipse, and then what makes this so extraordinary. Because if you look on the NASA website, I saw a lot. You gave us the number, 12,000 eclipses in the last 4,000 or 5,000 years. Yes. So there's been a lot of these, but there's something very unique about this. Help us to understand that.
Sure. According to NASA, there's 12,000 solar eclipses and 12,000 lunar eclipses. But of the 12,000 lunar eclipses, less than 4,000 were total lunar eclipses over a span of 5,000 years, which means I think it came to about one total lunar eclipse every year and a half.
So not that rare, every year and a half.
Every year and a half you have a total lunar eclipse, but now we have 4 total lunar eclipses within a year and a half, and they're falling on the biblical holidays, which has only happened 8 times in the last 2,000 years.
Now it becomes unique.
Yes.
Now, and what you did, which was so fascinating, and I want you to go back in history and tell us how you discovered this, because on the NASA website,
right,
and you told us that NASA, now it's all math, can go back for a 5,000-year span and tell us on what exact dates lunar or solar eclipses happened.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible because God created everything scientifically. They can do that. And so then to see that they're happening on these feast days only 8 times in the last 2,000 years, I was in shock.
So that was compelling that there was 4.
That there was 4 in a row, because that doesn't happen that often. And early in the morning, I was in my prayer closet praying, and as I'm contemplating all of this in the scriptures, as you very well know, in Acts and in Joel and the Gospels and Isaiah and Revelation, a thought came to me: you need to put this on the biblical calendar. And that was huge, because when I saw that they fell on Passover and Sukkot, I mean, it was just crazy.
That was the moment.
That
right?
was the moment.
Wow. One more question before we get into what it all means. That's so fascinating. You went back in history and you discovered when this has happened in history.
Yes, because my first thought was, because I love math, is how often does this happen? What are the odds? Not only to have 4 blood moons in a row, but to have them falling on the Jewish feast days. And then I saw it happen in 1967 when Israel recaptured Jerusalem. And that was huge. And then right after it became a nation in 1948. And my mind is just reeling. It's like, God, you meant what you said, you know. And so then I go back and I see it happen in 1492. And then as I research, I see in 70 AD, around the destruction of the temple, there's these eclipses, 32 and 33 AD. And God
So I want people to understand what this means. 1492, the Jews are expelled from Spain.
Yes.
The Spanish Inquisition, a very critical moment in Jewish history. 1948, Israel becomes a nation.
Right.
Fulfilling Bible prophecy, a nation born in a day. 1967, Jerusalem is restored, directly fulfilling the prophecy of Jesus himself. And you're saying all of these you found, in all of these dates, you found lunar or solar eclipses.
On the feast days. On the feast days.
Specifically on the feast days.
Yes, for example, here's what's amazing.
What are the odds of that?
It's not just the lunar, it's the solar eclipses as well. Do you know in 2015, 2014, we had the total lunar eclipse on Passover last week, and then we have one on the Feast of Tabernacles. But get a load of 2015. 2015, remember when God told Moses that Nisan 1 is to be the beginning of the religious calendar?
The biblical calendar.
This is when the fire fell from heaven and the grand opening ceremony of Moses' tabernacle. Lit the altar. 2015 on Nisan 1 begins with a total solar eclipse.
A total solar eclipse?
It's the first of Nisan. It's a new moon. You have a total solar eclipse on Nisan 1, followed 2 weeks later by a total lunar eclipse on Passover, followed by another solar eclipse on Rosh Hashanah, followed 2 weeks later by the super blood moon on the Feast of Tabernacles.
All on the NASA site. All you do is superimpose the Jewish calendar, the biblical calendar. That's incredible. We've got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what does it all mean? Are these prophetic warnings or just a coincidence? More with Pastor Mark Biltz. Don't go away.
Here at Jewish Voice, we are dedicated to proclaiming the gospel, the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, to the Jew first and also to the nations. One key way we do this is by providing life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. But our medical teams provide more than just physical care and comfort. It opens the door for us to share God's love and the good news that Jesus is their true Messiah. Today, we are urgently preparing for our next medical clinic in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. There we will minister to two impoverished Jewish communities, the Beta Avraham and the Beta Israel. We go with a powerful sense of urgency because we know that for some awaiting our arrival, time is literally running out. Infants and toddlers are the most vulnerable and the most likely to die needlessly for lack of basic medical care. The need will be enormous. The lines will be long. And right now, our supplies of medicines and resources are limited. How many can we help? The answer lies in part with you. Will you help save and transform the lives of precious people from Israel's lost tribes by sharing your most generous gift today? As our special thank you, when you respond with a gift of $40 or more, we'll send you Pastor Mark Biltz's latest DVD, Blood Moons, Decoding the Imminent Heavenly Signs. This powerful documentary reveals how God created blood moons to signal prophetic events on the horizon. With this insightful resource, you'll learn how to interpret signals from heavenly bodies and how to recognize and prepare for what's to come. In addition, we also want to send you a book by Rabbi Jonathan Bernis called 7 Keys to Unlock the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel. In this book, Jonathan reveals the 7 keys to understanding Israel's place in end-time events. And to learn what to look for in tomorrow's headlines, this book will help you to recognize and be part of what God is doing in these last days. Finally, as an ongoing expression of our thanks for choosing to help so many in need, you'll receive our Jewish Voice Today magazine. To share a gift in support of this desperately needed outreach and request your thank you resources, please call, click, or write now. And remember, your generous gift of $40, $80, $120 or more will help provide life-saving medical help to some very needy Jewish people. Once again, time is of the essence for many of these people. Please respond right now. God has divinely appointed times scheduled in history, and He uses the sun, the moon, and the stars as visible indicators. Lunar eclipses, also known as blood moons, are one of these signs. One blood moon has just occurred. According to our guest, 3 more are ahead. Pastor Mark Biltz, again today on Jewish Voice.
I'm back with Pastor Mark Biltz, who just released a brand new DVD called Blood Moons, Decoding the Imminent Heavenly Signs. I'm so fascinated by all this because the facts just keep compiling. They just keep mounting up, and the odds grow greater and greater and greater. Before we talk about what this all means, I want you to talk a little bit more about the biblical calendar, because it's when you put the biblical calendar, overlaid it to the dates, the NASA dates, that this all exploded for you. The revelation, yes. I'm on to something here.
Yes. Well, guess what? God says we're in the world, but we're not of it. And we need to realize we have to operate on 2 calendars. One of them is our normal Gregorian calendar, who we got from Julius Caesar. It was the Julian calendar first. Pagan Rome came up with this. It's based totally on the sun. It's a wonderful calendar, but it's not the one God uses. Then you have the Muslim calendar, which is based totally on the moon. Okay? Great calendar, but it's not the one God uses. This is why Ramadan will float. One year it'll be in June, another year July, another year August.
But Easter, Passover, same thing.
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. This is the importance of the biblical calendar. Now, how many of you believe that God is a God of order?
I believe that.
Okay.
Yes.
The Holy Spirit was not going to be poured out on Pentecost until He rose from the dead. He's not going to rise from the dead until He's buried. And He's not going to be buried until He died. Right?
We're with you.
God happened in order. Well, the problem is, a long time ago, the church got off the biblical calendar. Do you know in 2016, Easter is a month before Passover? We're celebrating the resurrection a month before He dies. Now think about the consequence of that. If this blood moon was happening in that year, no one would see the connection from the church.
And you see this connection clearly as you really study. Yeshua is at the center of all these. 3 feasts with a break, 3 more. First, second coming, and it all fits together like this.
Exactly. And what's amazing, in Revelation, it said Jesus was slain from the foundation of the world. That meant it was all planned. It's not like Jesus died and the Father goes, oh, great, we got to go to plan B. Okay? This was planned out from the beginning.
I want to be at the right place at the right time, which leads me to
the tour.
The question. No, not maybe a blood moon tour, but the question is, what meaneth this? And we all immediately think of Joel chapter 2, and I want to read that again. It tells us the sun will be turned to darkness, the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. That's the return of the Messiah. Now, the good news that follows, everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved.
Amen.
And then Peter preaches this. It preaches beautifully in the temple.
Oh, yeah.
3,000 get saved, but they were at the right place at the right time.
Right.
What does all this mean? We have the facts laid out.
Sure.
Are these blood moons the blood moons of Joel?
Well, here's how I like to explain that. First off, I want everyone to know I'm not setting dates. I do not control an eclipse. Okay? I do not control the biblical calendar. What I'm trying to say is God said He created the sun and the moon as signals on His feast days. I think everyone believes we're living in the last days. Think of these 4 red blood moons as a warning signal, like street lights that are flashing red. That means warning. Okay? Nothing's going to necessarily happen if you heed the warning, but there's a warning something could happen. Do you know when you read Joel, in the very context of these 4 blood moons, where the moon turns blood red, in that same context as Joel, God gives a warning that He is going to come against every nation that tries to divide His land.
Wow. Absolutely right.
And what do we see? This year and next year, the whole focus is dividing the land of Israel. And so I see these as 4 big warnings to Israel. You better not divide my land or judgment is coming. The solar eclipses are warning to the nations. You better not divide my land or judgment is coming. And God will deal in measure for measure. Well, here's the other thing. The other thing is I like the science. I like the math. I like sticking with the facts. And what did we see in 48? A biblically prophetic war involving Israel. What do we see in 67? A biblically prophetic war involving Israel. There are several biblically prophetic wars that haven't taken place yet. Okay, so I think this also could mean a biblically prophetic war involving Israel. Then also, when you look at the economy, the Shemitah year, every seventh year, if you remember, you used to be able to declare bankruptcy.
I want everybody to pay close attention because we're hearing some real nuggets. A warning not to divide the land, a warning that war is imminent in the Middle East, and we all know that. We're all watching Iran, we're all watching Hezbollah. I see this all connecting here, and now financial. So I just don't want anybody to miss these nuggets.
Sure.
So financial.
Okay, well, what do we know? The Shemitah year, every seventh year, was when all the debts were to be released. It was an economic reset. Do you know in 1994, do you remember when the comet Shoemaker-Levy hit Jupiter with 21 fragments? 1994 was a Shemitah year. Guess when the weekend was that these fragments hit Jupiter?
I never thought about it, so I am now.
It was the 9th of Av, a time of judgment. The Torah portion that day was Devarim, Deuteronomy.
I don't think many people understand what the 9th of Av is. This is not only the destruction of the temple, but keeps reappearing throughout history. Spanish Inquisition,
Yes.
9th of Av,
Well,
Kristallnacht, 9th of Av.
Who is not familiar with the 9th of Av, real quickly, so I could just, okay, let me explain. Think of the 9th of Av like the 9th of August, roughly when it appears. Remember when the 10 spies brought the bad report, Joshua and Caleb brought the good report? That happened on the 9th day of the month of Av. So that day became cursed throughout Jewish history. The Jewish temple in 587 BC was destroyed on the 9th of Av. 700 years later in 70 AD, when Rome destroyed the temple, same day, the 9th of Av. In 1290, all the Jews were kicked out of England on the 9th of Av. 1492, the Jews were kicked out of Spain on the 9th of Av. World War I started on the 9th of Av. Hitler's proclamation to kill the Jews was on the 9th of Av. And they rejected the land again in 2005 when they left the Gaza Strip. It happened at sunset of the 9th of Av.
Oh my gosh.
And so this is incredible. So here you see these 21 fragments hitting, and the Torah portion was Devarim or Deuteronomy, which includes the Shema, hear and obey. And Devarim means these are the words. In other words, God was speaking, I believe, that weekend, that with 21 fragments, the next 3 Shemitah years would be times of economic judgment. In 2001, it was on a Shemitah year, on Elul 29, Rosh Hashanah, is the first time the Dow fell 7%, the largest economic drop at that time. Exactly 7 years later, 2008, on Elul 29, Rosh Hashanah, on the biblical calendar, we don't see it on ours, the Dow fell 7%. It was a $777 billion loss on a $700 billion failed bailout on the first day of the 7th month on the biblical calendar in the 7th year.
I just want everybody to understand, we're just dealing with facts here. We're not saying this means that and this will dogmatically happen, but folks, these are facts. And one other fact is we're out of time. And we could go on and on. I'm very excited to make this announcement. We're doing a cruise to Alaska in July. And I said, I want to hear more about this. And I asked Mark to join us as our guest teacher. We're going to let Mark go much longer than this program on our cruise to talking about blood moons and plenty of questions and answers and so on, right in the midst of when these 4 are taking place.
Yes.
I'm so glad you're coming. I'm so glad we get to pick up this topic, and thank you. Awesome. Just fascinating. Last week we featured Pastor Mark Biltz's new book, Blood Moons, but there's also a DVD, and I watched it. It is incredible. I'm talking about a must-have. Using the biblical calendar, Mark shares an amazing discovery, lunar eclipses that happen to fall on key biblical holidays over the next 2 years. Is this a coincidence or an urgent message from God to warn us? You decide. You decide. Mark, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Here at Jewish Voice, we are dedicated to proclaiming the gospel, the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah. To the Jew first and also to the nations. One key way we do this is by providing life-saving medical help to some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. But our medical teams provide more than just physical care and comfort. It opens the door for us to share God's love and the good news that Jesus is their true Messiah. Today, we are urgently preparing for our next medical clinic in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. There we will minister to two impoverished Jewish communities, the Beta Avraham and the Beta Israel. We go with a powerful sense of urgency because we know that for some awaiting our arrival, time is literally running out. Infants and toddlers are the most vulnerable and the most likely to die needlessly for lack of basic medical care. The need will be enormous, the lines will be long, and right now, our supplies of medicines and resources are limited. How many can we help? The answer lies in part with you. Will you help save and transform the lives of precious people from Israel's lost tribes by sharing your most generous gift today? As our special thank you, when you respond with a gift of $40 or more, we'll send you Pastor Mark Biltz's latest DVD, Blood Moons, Decoding the Imminent Heavenly Signs. This powerful documentary reveals how God created blood moons to signal prophetic events on the horizon. With this insightful resource, you'll learn how to interpret signals from heavenly bodies and how to recognize and prepare for what's to come. In addition, we also want to send you a book by Rabbi Jonathan Bernis called 7 Keys to Unlock the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel. In this book, Jonathan reveals the 7 keys to understanding Israel's place in end-time events. And to learn what to look for in tomorrow's headlines, this book will help you to recognize and be part of what God is doing in these last days. Finally, as an ongoing expression of our thanks for choosing to help so many in need, you'll receive our Jewish Voice Today magazine. To share a gift in support of this desperately needed outreach and request your thank you resources, please call, click, or write now. And remember, your generous gift of $40, $80, $120 or more will help provide life-saving medical help to some very needy Jewish people. Once again, time is of the essence for many of these people. Please respond right now.
I want to show you a tribe now in Zimbabwe that's retained Old Testament traditions and rituals for over 2,500 years. They're called the Lemba. We recently held a wonderful outreach to provide medical care, eye care, dental care, eyeglasses, and it was people just like you that made a difference in their lives. Take a look at this amazing story.
In one of the most remote areas of southern Zimbabwe, a team of 51 volunteers were joined by 120 national workers. And together, they just finished one of the most challenging and rewarding Jewish Voice outreaches to date. In a week full of both work and ministry, the Lord's hand was clearly seen as Jewish Voice conducted its very first medical outreach to the impoverished Lemba Jewish community.
We've seen children who couldn't speak, they couldn't hear, they couldn't do anything. I'm shocked. And then they can speak and they can hear and they can say their names. Babies that there was this 18-month-old baby that couldn't even stand up or sit up, nothing. And then it had witchcraft bracelets on its wrist. They were cut off and the baby sat up immediately. I mean, eyes to see with adults. I've seen so many miracles. My heart is just filling up. I'm forever going to be changed over this entire experience. It's the best thing that has ever happened to me.
The Lord is looking down on this with favor, and He's looking down on this that He loves culture and He loves diversity. And I had such a warm, wonderful feeling that the Lemba here are very gentle and loving people, and that the Lord has not forgotten them, and that they have retained as much as they possibly can of their culture and of their Jewishness.
I want to personally invite you to join us on our next medical outreach. We really need volunteers. We need you. To volunteer, you can email us at outreach@jvmi.org. Again, that email is outreach@jvmi.org. And if you can't personally join us on one of these outreaches, there's still a way that you can help these precious people. And I'll tell you right after this break. We'll be right back.
Coming this summer, July 5th through July 12th, join Jonathan Burness and his family on a spectacular 7-day cruise to Alaska. You'll experience beautiful scenery, worship, and musical performances by concert violinist Maurice Sklar and modern-day psalmist Marty Goetz. There will also be great fellowship, as well as teachings by Jonathan Burness on the Jewish roots of our faith, and special guest Mark Biltz, who's a recognized authority on the blood moons phenomenon. Please check our website at www.jewishvoice.org for updates. To register now, call Jabez Travel at 1-888-435-3787, email Lisa at allchristiancruises.com, or visit our website. Be sure to join us in beautiful Alaska.
Since 1967, Jewish Voice has been dedicated to proclaiming the good news that Yeshua, Jesus, is Messiah and Savior, to the Jew first and also to the nations. Now, one way that we do this is by helping some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the world. We've been able to demonstrate God's love by providing these precious people with medical care, with dental care, with eye care, even eye surgeries, all completely free of charge. But most importantly, we use this to proclaim the gospel, the good news, and it's through your faithful support that we're able to make a difference in their lives. As our way of saying thank you, I'd like to send you Pastor Mark Biltz's latest DVD, Blood Moons, Decoding the Imminent Heavenly Signs. I don't often say that a DVD is a must-have, but this one is different. The men of Issachar were wise, the Bible says, because they understood the time. And if God is trying to warn us through heavenly occurrences, we need to heed those warnings. This DVD brings to light factual occurrences on specific dates according to NASA. What they mean is for you to decide, but you need to know. In addition, I also want you to have one of my books, 7 Keys to Unlock the Prophetic Mysteries of Israel. In this book, I cover 7 specific events taking place right now before our very eyes that directly fulfill prophecies written thousands of years ago related to the last days and the return of Jesus the Messiah to this earth. And as an additional bonus, when you share and request these resources, we'll also want you to have our Jewish Voice Today magazine. This is a bi-monthly magazine about some really vital topics pertaining to Israel, Bible prophecy, and to the Jewish roots of your faith. This is a great resource, and I want to get it into your hands. And remember, when you choose to receive these materials, your gift will be used to help some of the most impoverished and needy Jewish people in the entire world. Hey, by the way, we're on Facebook. You can check us out by going to facebook.com/Jewish Voice. And when you do, be sure to like our page, and then you can stay up to date on everything that's happening here at Jewish Voice. We're out of time. As I leave you today, I want to remind you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And the Bible says that when you do, you'll prosper. Psalm 122:6 says, "They shall prosper that love thee." Until next time, this is Jonathan Burness saying shalom, and God bless you.
Jewish Voice is made possible by the support of friends and partners like you.